We're going to have a question and answer period right now. So we did pass out cards. So hopefully some of you have already filled those cards out with your questions. And so you're ready to ask them. So we had everyone sign up so we can get people involved at our for our next project. And it's to elect a progressive city council that will help work for truly affordable housing. So all of you signed up. We'll look for the announcement for the date of our next project. So these first two questions, let's see, the first questions. This is for Steve Barton. Okay, so bear with me. If a small apartment landlord, oh gosh.
How would you choose a question?
I just got handed cards, so we're just going to read the questions that we get.
I think I gave you my card first.
Okay, that's okay. That's okay.
We have a process, guys.
So I'll get to your question, I promise. So let's go. Unfortunately, I can't read this question because of the writing, but let's start off with this. Off-site housing results in segregation of low-income persons. The long-term social costs of this may outweigh any savings on construction. So can anyone address that issue?
I'm happy to do that. By the way, I forgot to mention that copies of my slideshow are available on your way out. I thank the organizers for making those copies. So remember that the existing housing that has been built in Berkeley that's targeted to low-income people is all under 100 units. There is a lot of evidence that getting poor people out of neighborhoods of concentrated poverty is very important. There is no evidence that poor people being able to live in the same building and share the elevator going up and down with rich people is particularly valuable to them. So the entire city of Berkeley is in the process of gentrification. So helping more poor people live in Berkeley is not segregating them. It's enabling some fraction of the number of poor people and people of color that used to be able to live here to stay in Berkeley. Now, I know people have said that, but it's faster to get the units in the developer's building rather than go through an additional couple of years of process to provide the affordable housing by other means. I've been working on affordable housing since 1975. Let's see, that's 40 years now. I can tell you that given the choice between 10 affordable units in a developer's building now and 20 affordable units 10 years from now, we'll all still be working on this issue 10 years from now, and we'll all be glad if there's twice as much affordable housing.
On the second issue regarding our present situation on housing, I just lost my question. Sorry about that, guys. So it says, this is more of a comment, but it says, food, clothing, shelter, are these rights or privileges? Alternatives, starvation, naked, and homeless.
Yeah, that's right on.
Yes, that's right on.
Even an animal needs a place to live. A French or a hole.
The other question is there a moratorium on development possible? Would it be too late?
A moratorium on development is possible, but if I recall correctly, it would take at least 6 votes on the city council, which seems very unlikely at present. As to whether it's too late, I don't know the answer to that.
The question by someone is the governor, what's Governor Brown's take on this? Is there? Moni? So does anyone have a comment about what Governor Brown's take on this issue right now is?
Well, I'll just say that Governor Brown has shown over and over again that he is no particular friend of affordable housing.
So this question is, do we really know how much housing we really need? And at what levels? Example, housing for people of low income, very low income, moderate income, and upper income.
I think the answer is we need as much as we can possibly get. If I had a long-term goal for the city of Berkeley, it would be that 20% of its total housing, which is about 50,000 units, so 20% would be 10,000 units, would be permanently affordable to low, very low, and extremely low-income people. That's, we currently have 2,000 permanently affordable units, so believe me, it's going to be a while before we get up to 8,000, even if the city council gets on board and we really try and move on this. Building affordable housing and converting existing housing to permanent affordability is a long-term project where you have to commit yourself for a really long time.
Okay, also this question is for Steve. Is it possible, or are there statewide and or local efforts to overturn Costa-Hawkins so cities can reinstate vacancy control?
Yeah!
Well, the formerly strong rent-controlled cities, Berkeley, Santa Monica, East Palo Alto, and West Hollywood, all have official positions supporting the restoration of vacancy control. Again, you know, it seems to me the balance of power in the state legislature is held by what are called the business Democrats, so that the chances of repealing Costa-Hawkins are really low. And that's why I've been putting my efforts into the landlord tax, the affordable housing tax, because it can be done by local governments and not have to go through a state legislature that's basically been a graveyard for most affordable housing and pro-tenant measures over the past decades.
Thank you. If a landlord tax takes 3 years to pass, a lot of people will be dislocated in the process. So is there any way to move this moratorium on rent increases to move that faster?
The answer is that we need to do everything we can to preserve the protections that Berkeley's rent control system currently has. Kathy Haar and the Berkeley Tenants Union are working on that. I really urge everybody here who's not already a member to join the Berkeley Tenants Union, because the kinds of things that we might like to see in terms of protecting people from that pressure largely come from Costa-Hawkins, from vacancy decontrol, and since it's state law, there's nothing we can do about it.
There's so much we can do about it.
So the question is, what are all those housing developments being built in West Berkeley at the foot of University Avenue? Are they part of Agenda 21? And do you know about Agenda 21?
You know, the United Nations has something called Agenda 21, which is aimed at reducing greenhouse gases, and among the measures is concentrated higher density development near transit lines. There's a whole set of opposition to that by people who are opposed to density. Remember, cities in the United States are symbols of density and of moral evil. And you can't find a suburban community where people won't jump up and down if someone even promotes luxury condominiums if it's an apartment building, because apartment buildings, there's a long tradition of opposing apartment buildings on the grounds that they represent that moral evil of the city instead of the nice single-family homes with their yards around them that represents the American way. So the people involved in attacking Agenda 21 refer to this as stack and pack housing, and it's contrary to the American single-family home tradition. Truthfully, I haven't got much patience for that. It's just another form of the kinds of pressures that are being put on East Palo Alto that I talk to later that are fundamentally opposition to working class people and to people of color.
This is just a question that came out. So why aren't there any black men asked to be on this panel to respond to that? All the people who are here were invited. Several, the organizers did make an effort to reach out to organizations with African American men, and no one was available. Okay.
NAACP, Cal Black students, a whole lot of them.
Okay. So the next question is, what about trying to repeal the Ellis Act at the state level? Can rent control be extended to houses that were built after the 1980s?
Could you repeat the question because it's very hard to hear?
Okay, so what about trying to repeal the Ellis Act at the state level? Can rent control be extended to houses built after the 1980s?
Those are both good targets. Now, last year there was an effort by San Francisco to weaken the Ellis Act specifically just as a pilot program for San Francisco, and it still didn't make it through the state legislature. That isn't to say that it isn't worth trying, it's just very hard. Now, the irony of Costa-Hawkins is that it freezes your base year for new construction. So Berkeley, as Costa-Hawkins exists, can't bring new construction under rent control. But other cities that don't currently have rent control, for example, the city of Richmond, the city of Mountain View, places where people are talking about bringing in rent control, will be able to apply it to housing that's built up to 1996 at the point at which Costa-Hawkins comes in. But then they can't apply it to newer housing. So that would be well worth pressing the legislature on to create, for example, a rolling 20-year exemption for new construction. At this point, the majority of the rental housing in the city of San Jose is exempt from rent control because most of it has been built after the 1980 point at which their new construction exemption is frozen in. So there is some chance that small reforms like weakening Ellis and like slightly changing the new construction exemption could be passed.
Okay, we're going to take two more questions. To what degree do you believe short-term rentals are putting pressure on the market in Berkeley?
Yeah, Airbnb.
So there are a lot of people who want to, actually share their home. They want to rent out their place while they're on vacation. And I, for one, don't oppose that. What we're concerned with is that there are some large landlords in Berkeley that have 15, 20, 12, 8 whole units rented only on Airbnb. So we've lost at least 400 units have been turned into hotel rooms. And right now, the city council actually asked for what we want. Whole units that should be somebody's home can't be short-term rentals. But the planning commission is talking about allowing second units and duplexes to be short-term rentals. Unfortunately, second units and duplexes make up almost 5% of our housing stock. So it's really important that either when this comes to the planning commission the first week of December, or when this comes back to the city council in January, that we stand our ground and say, sure, somebody can rent out their house when they're not using it, but no, we don't want whole empty units to be turned into hotel rooms. One of the things the hotel union likes to point out too is that the people that are cleaning those houses, they're not getting paid a living wage. It's bad for everybody.
Yeah. Why is it okay to pick and choose what questions you're going to ask? If you took cue cards from everybody, that's kind of like unfair.
Well, the question is, we have 1,000 documented cases of people who are homeless in Berkeley, and all these proposals are for the future. So, what is the solution to help those people who are homeless now? Is that the question? So, can anyone answer this issue on homelessness right now? That's the question, you know. But we're looking for answers to help protect people stay in their homes. The people who are outside right now.
They used to have a home, so that's all I'm saying. And they have income, so I'm just trying to figure out what we're gonna do with the people that are documented. These are nice proposals for the future, but what about now, right now, like right next door, there's a guy who's going out.
Yeah, well, that's what we're trying to figure out. We're trying to figure that out.